it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie, and welcome to another episode of Punk Shui. This is the show where I talk about music that combines the energy of punk rock with the ecstasy of a great melody. It's not pop punk, it's not punk pop, it's punk shui. And on this episode, I'm going to talk about an original, an OG British punk band by the name of Chelsea. Celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. They formed in 1976. The first lineup of the band was vocalist Gene October. He is the only member that has remained through every lineup change. But the first lineup also included a bass player by the name of Tony James, a drummer by the name of John Toe or John Toey, and a guitar player by the name of William Broad, who changed his stage name to Billy Idol. They were backing Gene October up, but that only lasted a few weeks, and then they went off and they formed Generation X, who later became Gen X, and of course, Billy Idol became a solo star. Now, a lot of you are probably going, who's Chelsea? Have I ever heard Chelsea? The problem with Chelsea is that they've suffered the lineup change syndrome, which means that there's been so many lineup changes that it's hard for fans to sort of hang on. You know, a lot of people will say, oh, I love the original lineup. And then 2 years later, that original lineup was changed or whatever. But I'll tell you, some of the members of the band, like James Stevenson, has played for years on and off. And he was back there in the original 77 to 80, I think. And then he came back in 99 to 2017. And oh, it's just, yeah, he's just super talented. Any band that James Stevenson in, he brings that band up a notch. But the current lineup features Nick Austin on guitar and Matt Sargent on bass. Both of them have been with the band for quite a few years, and they're great collaborators with Gene. I think Rob Miller also plays guitar. Steve Granger plays drums. But Gene is the man, the myth, and the legend that has fronted this band for so many years. They've got a lot of albums out, probably more than most people think, but not really as many as they should have released, because they're really a top-notch band. I'll tell you, they started out, their first single was Right to Work. Now, if you've heard the song Right to Work and you love it, that's fantastic. But that's standard punk. You know, it could have, I don't mean to be disrespectful. It's a great song. I'm glad that Chelsea did it, but it could have been by any of the second-tier punk bands back then. Because Chelsea really didn't come into their own until like a couple singles, that, you know, like High Rise Living. And then, you know, especially by the time they put out their self-titled debut album and the album Evacuate. And they started writing these great songs. And what kind of punk is Chelsea? It's not really oi, although there can be some oi elements throughout their career. It seems like, now they don't sound like The Clash, but it seems like they kind of write within that sphere, you know, with sometimes the higher backing vocals like, you know, Mick Jones would provide for Joe Strummer. And, you know, there was a period there in the late 80s, early 90s where a lot of punk bands were sort of flailing a little bit. They were still putting out good records, but they weren't, you know, the production wasn't hot and heavy. And it wasn't until the early to mid 90s that really punk came back into fashion. These guys were able to get a little bit more money and record their albums. But let's stop talking about the band and let's start talking about the music, because I have a medley coming up. I'm not going to go super in depth and tell you who's on every album and thing like that, but I am going to show you their catalog. I'm not going to show you any of the live albums because I don't own them, and I'll only show you a few of the compilations. But I will start with, now this was actually their first album. It was self-titled. This was the official first album, and this came out in 1979. But there was a collection that came out a little bit later called Alternative Hits, which featured the singles that came out before the Chelsea album. And I sort of consider that the first album because it has all the singles. This is the first legit album, but if you want to hear their really raw early punk singles, Alternative Hits is an album to get. But the 4 CDs I'm going to show you now is on the Step Forward years. This is a 4 CD set that came out on Cherry Red, Captain Oi. This is really wonderful. It does have tons of bonus tracks. In fact, most of the bonus tracks on here is most of the album Alternative Hits. So you definitely want to check that out. The box set also features the BBC archives, or is that Peel? BBC sessions. There's also a rarities disc that has a ton of great tracks. And then their second album, their official second studio album, is called Evacuate. And those first two albums, just top-notch, great songs, great playing, catchy hooks. And this one here contains the rest of their Step Forward releases. So between Disc 1 and Disc 4, you're going to get all the songs that were on the alternative hits plus. And as it states, it covers the years 77 to 82 on there. Another kind of box set I want to show you is Chelsea Anthology 1. And this is a 3 CD set. And this has 1979's self-titled album, 1980's alternative hits, and Evacuate from 1982, plus bonus tracks on it. This is a great 3 CD set. Anthology 2, and this contains sort of a kind of a dip in production. Songs were still really good, and they were also moving out of the punk phase, because by 1985, punk was passé. Not in the underground, but in the charts. And of course, people wanted to sell records. So they were messing with the sound a little bit. There's some great, great music on there. But this one contains the album's Original Sinners from 1985, Rocks Off from 1986, and Under Wraps from 1989. And then Anthology 3 contains 3 more albums. Now, the alternative came out in 1993. Trader's Gate came out in 1994, but it was 10 years before Faster, Cheaper, and Better Looking came out in 2005. And that originally came out on the Captain Oi label, which I absolutely love. And that Faster, Louder, and Cheaper is kind of a return to form, and which is what I expect for them being on the Captain Oi label. A lot of power, a lot of great songs on that album. Now, during that time of those 3 albums, Gene October released a solo album, and that is called Life and Struggle. Took another 10 years, and then Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, and this continues that trajectory of great music, in the latter part of their career. 2 years later, out came Mission Impossible, another collection of great songs. This lineup with Nick Austin, Matt Sargent, they were really providing him some great backup, musical support, songwriting, all that kind of stuff. And then the last official studio album actually came out in 2021, and this is another fine album. It's called Meanwhile Gardens. And now they did record an album and put it out in 2022, but it was Evacuate Revisited. So it was like the 40th anniversary of the album Evacuate. So the current lineup recorded the album, and they also recorded some of their other hits, like I'm on Fire, which is my favorite Chelsea song. I'm on Fire is just absolutely incredible. And now there's tons of compilations out there. There's rarities comps, there's BBC comps, there's live albums. The only 2 that I have in my collection are the Punk Singles Collection, 77 to 82, which is basically the Step Forward years. And it has A's and B's, and that's on the Captain Oi label. And then there's another great, in my opinion, great compilation. It's called Urban Kids, a punk rock anthology. And this was on what label? This was on Castle Records. 2 CDs. And that's fantastic. And it has some solo Gene October that isn't on that album. I mean, Chelsea, like I said, I think they're just a victim of the lineup change syndrome. They deserve a lot more attention here in the States. A lot of people got introduced to them because they played in the movie Erg, A Music War. And they did I'm on Fire. I don't know if they did any other song, but it's just a fantastic band. Now, if you're not that familiar with Chelsea, I've got great news. I have put together a medley, and this is going to focus on, a couple songs from the first couple of albums. I put at least one song from every album except Under Wraps, because I didn't feel that a song from Under Wraps would fit into this medley. But please sit back, relax, give this a listen, and I will see you on the other side.
We have the right to work. 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 Yes, we do. And high rise it gets me down, down. It gets me down, down, down. Other kids escape.
Anyway, that is it. I hope this inspires you to check out music by Chelsea. I appreciate you watching this video. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me, I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.